Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad and today we're going to be discussing how we can add ElasticSearch to our ASP.NET 6 application. We're going to be basically adding ElasticSearch locally on our machine, running it and then connecting to it through our ASP.NET application. And once we have done that, we're going to be able to see how we can configure ElasticSearch, create an index. Once all of that is done, we're going to be creating a controller, and inside that controller we're going to be actually having two actions. One to actually search our Elasticsearch and get back the data, and the second one is to add products or basically add items to our Elasticsearch. So if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. It will really help the channel. Today we're going to be continuing exploring our Elasticsearch journey. We're going to check how we can add items to Elasticsearch, how we're going to be able to query them, update them, so on and so forth. We're going to be utilizing an existing project that we have started already before. And for that, we need to go to my GitHub account. So let's jump into it. So once you go to my GitHub account, please follow me there if you're not already following me there. And what we need to do is we need to go to repositories. And once we go to the repositories section, we need to look for ELK. And once we search for ELK, we can see that we have a project which is called net6-ELK. This is the project that we want. So let's open it in a new tab. And basically all we need to do here is we need to click on code and download the source code to our machine. I have already done that. So, once we have got this on our own machine, we need to open it in Visual Studio Code, and I have already done this for us. So first things first. What we need to do here is first we need to make sure that our Elasticsearch is running locally. We need to make sure that Kibana is also running. We already have all of this inside our project. We have basically a Docker Compose file which contains all of the information that we're going to be needing. It's going to contain basically how the images and the information instruction set that we're going to be utilizing in order for us to run Elasticsearch and Kibana in our local machine. We're going to be going through these commands inside our Docker Compose file, so we can just do a quick overview about what do they do. If you want to learn more about this, I'm going to link a video here where we're going to be delving more into the details about this project and how actually it works in the background, and we delve more into Elasticsearch and ELK, why do we need them, and so on and so forth. But for this video, we're going to go on a quick overview about this Docker Compose file and how does it work. So once we have done that, we're going to be actually starting updating our project and actually utilizing and adding Elasticsearch to it and adding item to Elasticsearch. So let's actually now start and explain what does exist inside this Docker Compose file. So as we can see here, once we open our project, we have two folders. We have a folder called Docker and we have a folder called Source. So let's open the Docker folder, and inside our Docker folder, we're going to have something called a docker-compose.yaml. And basically a docker-compose.yaml, it means that this is going to be the Docker Compose file where we're going to actually initialize a lot of different Docker images in order for us to utilize them. And these Docker images are two actually. One of them is going to be Elasticsearch, the other one is going to be Kibana. So let's start first of it. So the first line here inside our Docker Compose is we specify the version of our Docker Compose, and in our case it's going to be 3.1. And then we're going to be specifying all of those services that we're going to be actually utilizing inside our Docker Compose. And as we can see here, we have actually two services. One of them is Elasticsearch, the other one is Kibana, which is great. Then we're going to be giving our container names. In our case, simply ELS, which stands for Elasticsearch, and the other one is going to be Kibana. And then what we're doing here is we're specifying the image from where are we going to be able to get this Elasticsearch. And as we can see here, we're getting it from Docker Hub, and we're getting it through Elasticsearch, and we're specifying the version that we want. And in our case, it's going to be 7.16.1. Then we're going to be specifying the ports, the volumes, where are we going to be storing all of this data. And then once all of that's done, we're specifying some environmental configuration specifically for Elasticsearch, and then we're specifying a network. And what does a network here mean? It's basically because every container runs independently, and because every container is basically shield of other containers which is running, because we want to be able to Elasticsearch and Kibana to be actually working together and to be able to share information, what we need to do is we need to make sure that these two containers are part of the same network. So we're going to put them inside the same walled garden together so they'll be able to share information. So for this reason, we're specifying a network. But as a as a rule, every container runs independently. Every container is unique. Every container does not share any information with any other container unless we specifically told it that it needs to do that. So in our case, this is why we have specified a network. A network, it basically means that this container and any other container exists in the same network. They're going to be able to communicate. They're going to be able to know that each other container exists as well with them in that same network, and they'll be able to share information together. So that's why we have specified a network here. So now that we have discussed all of this regarding to Elasticsearch, similarly, we're going to be discussing this for Kibana. So similarly, for Kibana, we're going to have here the container name, basically where is this Kibana located, the Kibana image, the ports that we're going to be needing, and then we have something which is really important, and we can see here it says depends on Elasticsearch. So what does depends on mean? So it means that if Elasticsearch, when we're trying to run it, it doesn't run correctly, or for any reason it fails, Kibana will also not run, because we are adding here a dependency structure or dependency hierarchy. So in order for Kibana to work, we need to make sure that Elasticsearch is running. So that way we are making sure that Kibana is not basically gonna crash when it runs, because we have this dependency to Elasticsearch, and because both of them in the same walled garden, which basically both of them are the same network, we are able to actually make these two connections work together and be able to communicate. So that's why we have put the dependency here. So other one, we have specified the environment, how are we be able to communicate with Kibana, and then we also specified the network, which is perfect. And the last point that we have here is network and volumes. So volumes is basically because containers does not store any information. Containers are basically stateless. Whenever a container is run, every information that's run there, as soon as the container shut off, this information is lost forever. There is no way for us to retrieve those information. In order for us to keep some kind of persistency inside our containers whenever they run, is we need to utilize volumes. And volume is basically, it's like a window inside our container. So basically what that means is we can actually store some of the information that we want from that container into somewhere outside that container. So for example, let's say we're adding some logs. It's all for example right now, and we want to be able to keep track of those logs even if the container is shut down. So whenever the application runs, we are telling the container that it needs to communicate with the actual operating system, and inside that operating system there is some kind of file that it needs to store the information there, or folder. So it will know that all of the logs, for example, it will not be actually stored inside that container, it will be actually stored inside that folder on our desktop or on our computer. So that way it will be able to keep it persistent. So in case that container fails, those logs will actually exist there and we can actually take a look at them. So that's why we need volumes. It will be able to actually it will allow us to persist our storage or persist the information that we're going to be needing. Because if we don't have volumes, again, as soon as the container is shut down, or actually it fails or it needs to restart, all of the information inside the container is lost forever, because it's an instance of an image which is running, and every time it runs again, every information that exists there is completely lost. So once we have done that, we discussed volumes. Last thing is network. As we said, network is utilized in order for us to have a single walled garden, and inside this walled garden right now we're specifying a network which is going to be a bridge network. I'm not going to delve too much into what is a bridge, but I recommend to do your research on that. And basically, in essence, a bridge means that it allows us to actually communicate between different containers. That's a very simplified, very simplified again explanation of a bridge, but it's a very basic type of network which these containers can utilize in order for them to communicate. So once we have done that, once we have understood all of these and how do they work together, basically this is all of the setup that we're going to be needing in order for us to make our application run. There is no our Elasticsearch runs. So that's the initial foundation that we're going to be needing in order for us to have Elasticsearch available for us locally on our machine, as well in order for us to be able to utilize it directly from our machine. So how do we run this? So if you picked it up, because we are utilizing Docker Compose, we must have Docker installed on our machine. You can go to, let's open our web browser, and inside our web browser, let's type install Docker. And basically, once you go and look for install Docker, You can see here, you can go to docker.com/products/docker-desktop, and you can either install it. I'm running on a Mac, so it will automatically detect that my installation is gonna be on a Mac. So you can download here whatever, if you have an M1 chip or you have an Intel chip, you can download it. As well, you can see below it, it's available on Windows or Linux. Once you click on Windows, you'll actually be able to download it on Windows. Similarly, on Linux, you'll be able to download it. Let's cancel this, we don't really need it right now. I have already done that. So once you download it and install it, you will see here a small whale on top, and once you click on it, you'll see a green light. And if we open the dashboard, let's wait for it, let's give it a few seconds for it to open. You can see here that we have the green color, and the green, it means that it's the Docker engine is running. If you want to understand more about Docker and Docker engine, so on and so forth, I have a dedicated video for that, which I'm going to be linking up on the upper right hand side here somewhere. You can actually check it out. So once you have done all of that and you have the Docker installed and so on and so forth, what you need to do is, let's go back to our Visual Studio Code. You need to actually run this Docker file, Docker compose file. So what we need to do is we need to actually make these engines run in the background and make ElasticSearch run on our machine. So how do we do that? It's very simple. So first, let's see where we are. We are in the root directory. Let's navigate to the Docker folder, and we're gonna type a very simple command, which basically gonna actually allow us to run the Docker compose and all of this automatically. So all we need to do is type docker -compose space up /d. What does that mean? Docker compose, we're just telling Docker, or basically the Docker engine, that we have a Docker compose file that we want to execute. Up it means that we want to start it up, and basically we want to run it. And the -d means it's detached. So let's see what does it do without this, and then we're gonna see what does it -d means. So right now, when I click on enter, and make sure just so we are all on the same page, I have cleared all of my Docker images. So basically, whatever I'm gonna see here, you're gonna see on your machine. So once we run this, we can see that we can see that it's actually pulling. Let's go back. Let's make this a bit bigger so we can see what's going on. If we go a bit up, let's understand it. So we can see here it's running and it's actually pulling Kibana. And if we go a bit down, we should see it started to download. And let's go a bit more down. We can see it's actually started to download all of these Docker images for us, which is going to be Kibana and Elasticsearch as well. So let's go down. We can see it's downloading, and this is going to take a good amount of time for the first time. It's going to roughly take around 5 minutes. So once all of that is done, what it's doing, let's do a quick explanation while this is working. So in essence, it's basically connecting to Docker Hub. It's looking for the images there, which is going to be in our case Kibana and Elasticsearch. It's downloading them to my machine. Once it's actually downloading them, it's actually executing them, and basically based on the configuration that I have passed through the Docker compose file, is doing all of this configuration for us. And once it's actually configure them and it execute them, it basically keeps them running for us in the background. So this is gonna take a bit of time. Once that is done, we're gonna be actually resuming the video.
A few moments later.
So now that our application, or basically our Docker compose finished running, we can see that our application, or basically Docker Elasticsearch as well as Kibana, are actually running in the background. So we can see here Kibana and we have Elasticsearch. So how can we make sure that they are actually running? So first things first, if we want to make sure that Elasticsearch is running, let's go back to our web browser. And here, let's go to localhost 9200. And once we open that, we can see that we have our, let's make this a bit bigger. And we can see here that we have a local cluster for us, which is going to be our Elasticsearch cluster on our local machine. We can see that we have the version that we have specified. It says that type is built of Docker, and we have all of the basic information. And this information gives us here that we know that right now Elasticsearch is actually running on our local machine, which is great. So how did we know that it's gonna be of port 9200? If we go back to our source code and we take a look at the ports, we can see here to which port we are trying to connect to Elasticsearch, and we can see that we have specified the port 9200 to connect to Elasticsearch, which is perfect. The next thing is we need to make sure that Kibana is running. And how do we do that? We basically see here that we have the ports 5601. So let's go back to our web browser and let's go here and let's put localhost instead of this. It's gonna be 5601. And let's open this, and now we should see basically Elasticsearch loading, and Kibana is going to be able to load off of that. So let's make this a bit smaller, and we can see here that we have Elasticsearch running directly, and we can actually see that Kibana is automatically running as well, which is perfect. So now that we have made sure that Elasticsearch and Kibana is running, now we can move to the next step. But one thing before we actually go into actually the code itself, there's a nice extension that I highly recommend that you can install in your web browser. It exists for basically all modern browsers, which is called Elastic View. So let's go, for example, I have already opened it here, but let me show you how you can actually get it. So basically you go to your preferred search engine and you type Elastic View. And basically I want it for my Edge browser. You can put the Chrome, whatever you want. I'm just going to put Edge. And once you go there, you can see the first thing is you can see this nice extension that actually comes up for you. And all you need to do right now, because I have already installed it, I have removed, but if you haven't installed it, you're going to see an install button. And once you click on install, it will be installed on your web browser. Once it's installed, you can see here there's like a nice logo which pop up next to the search bar. And if you hover over it, you can see it's Elastic View. So let's click on it. And once we actually click on it, we can see that it has automatically popped us with the Elasticsearch URL, which is 9200, which is we have. And if we click on test connection, we can see that the connection has been successful. We can see we got the confirmation down here. And if we click to connect, we are able to connect to the actual Elasticsearch cluster, and we can see all of different information that the Elasticsearch cluster. This is going to be really helpful when we start adding items to our Elasticsearch, and if you want to actually see those items in real time inside our Elasticsearch, this tool will be really helpful for us. So once we have covered that and we have installed this extension, now let's jump into the code and we can actually start implementing Elasticsearch inside our code, as well actually adding stuff to it and searching at Elasticsearch so we can get more information out of it. So before we do that, there is one point that I would really like to discuss, is why did we not add -d when we ran our Docker Compose app. So we can see here right now Kibana and Elasticsearch are running wild, and we can see all of our terminal is running, and basically we cannot actually use our terminal because they are running, and we can see all of this information popping in and out. But let's see, we don't want that. We want them to run in the background, and we don't really want to actually work with them, or we don't want to see all of these different messages. So let's stop them. So let's stop, Control-C, we can see they have stopped, and basically it's always good to to shut down properly other than the Control-C, and to do that you need to do docker -compose down. And basically what does it mean? It means it actually remove everything from memory. So right now that we have stopped everything and we have shut down our Kibana and Elasticsearch, we want to actually run them without seeing all of this different metadata that they are generating. So how can we do that? It's very simple. We need to do docker -compose up, and we're gonna put -d, which means it's gonna be detached. So let's click on that. And basically we see here very simple information that we see that the network has been created, the container of Elasticsearch has been created, and the container for Kibana has been created, and they are now running. And now we can see, for example, that we can utilize our command prompt as we need. And if we want to make sure that they are actually running, we can put docker ps, and basically docker ps will give us a list of all of the containers which is running on our machine, and we can see here that we have Kibana and Elasticsearch running, and they have been running for the last, right now, 22nd minute. If we run it again, it should be 34, 35, and both of them are running simultaneously, which is exactly what we wanted. Perfect. So now that we have covered basically Elasticsearch, Kibana, how to run them on our machine, can we run them in the background, what does the -d stand for, and all of this information, the different configuration that we're going to be needing, the extension. Now it's time actually for us to go to our ASP.NET Core application, and there we're going to be installing some packages. And once we install those packages on our application, we're going to start adding Elasticsearch to it and adding stuff to it. So let's get started. So first things first, we're going to be actually navigating back to where the application is. So cd, and we're going to put ls, and we're going to go to the src folder, and we're going to type ls again. We're going to go to the .NET ELK folder, and if we see here, we are inside our application right now. So we're going to, first of all, we need to build the application to make sure that it builds successfully. So we're going to put .NET build. And basically right now what it's going to be doing, it's going to actually install all of the different NuGet packages, and actually it's going to build the application. So now we see that the build is successful and build succeeded, which is great. So once we have done that, the next step for us is we actually want to start adding the Elasticsearch implementation. So in order for us to be able to communicate with Elasticsearch, we're going to be needing a package. And luckily for us, Elastic, which is the company behind Elasticsearch and Kibana, provided a NuGet package. And this NuGet package is called Nest. And Nest is basically a high-level integration that we can actually, a package actually, which we can actually utilize in order for us to communicate with Elasticsearch. It's free. All we need to do is just download and install our Nest package inside our application, and we'll be able to communicate with our Elasticsearch cluster or instance, whatever we want. So how do we do that? We're going to be first installing a package of Nest inside our application, and once we install the Nest package inside our application, we're going to be adding those configuration, and then we're going to be able to create the dependency injection for our Elasticsearch, and then we're going to be able to communicate with Elasticsearch. So first of all, we need to add this NuGet package, and it's going to be very easy. We're going to be utilizing the .NET add package command. So .NET add package, and it's going to be called Nest, N-E-S-T, and that's it. And just give it a few seconds for it to install. Perfect. Now we can see it's installed successfully. If I go here to my src folder, and I click on .NET ELK CS Proj, I see that we have the latest version of Nest installed on my machine. Perfect, which is version 7.17 by the time of this recording. So once we have done all of that, now it's time for us to add some configuration to our app settings. Because basically what we want to do here is we want to specify how are we going to be able to communicate with Elasticsearch. Luckily for us, previously we have already added the ALK configuration, and we specified where is our Elasticsearch, which is really good for us, so we don't really have to do a lot of work from there. But basically the main information from here is we need to add some more information, so it will allow us to add data to our Elasticsearch, and basically it will make it easier for us to have a central location where we store all of the different configuration that we need for our Elasticsearch instance. So the first thing that we're going to be doing here is, let's add a comma, and we need to add an index. And for this instance, because we're going to be adding products to our Elasticsearch, we're going to call this index product. So you might think to yourself, okay, what's an index? Why do I need to add an index inside my configuration? What does the word index mean? So let's take a step back. If we want to think about Elasticsearch, what is it exactly? It's basically a document-based storage. So basically, the way we are storing information is similar to what we have in DocumentDB, which is basically a non-relational database. And what does that mean? So that means that the way that we are storing the file is, let's say we have like some kind of a JSON, and we are creating, for example, a JSON file. And again, this is oversimplifying again, so we can understand how it works with way oversimplification, so we can get the idea behind an index. So let's say inside our non-SQL database, we create a section, or for example, a folder, and inside that folder, we put all of the JSON files that we have for that specific section. So for example, I want to create a section where I store all of my products. So that section is called an index, and inside that section I store all of my products, and those products are in form of a JSON. So it's a JSON format. It contains, for example, similar to any JSON object that I have. So it must have the curly braces, the key value pair, so on and so forth. So this section inside in my non-relational database, or my document DB database, in our case Elasticsearch, is the index. So that's why I need to create an index, which means that the actual section inside my Elasticsearch where I'm going to be able to store all of my different information. So let's think about it in a different way. So let's say inside my Elasticsearch I want to store, for example, products. I want to store suppliers. I want to store users information, or not users, user information, for example. I want to store, for example, deals. I want to store, for example, some advertisement. I want to store, for example, some link to most frequent asked question or most search about products. All of this information. I don't want this data to always be queried inside my database, and then once it's querying to my database, I have to go all the way back, process them, because that's going to create a high level of dependency input output on my database, and a database is much more slower than my Elasticsearch. So what I do, for example, for this case, is I actually connect to my database. I sync all of this information that I want to Elasticsearch, and whenever I need anything quick and fast, instead of querying my database, I query my Elasticsearch. That's a different topic for a different day. But in our for the purpose of this video, we just want to understand why do we want to do this. So as we said, an index is a section inside of Elasticsearch where I store certain type of information. In our case right now, we're going to be storing products. So I'm going to have an index for a products where I will store all of the information for a product. Let's say I have another index for users. I'll have another index called users, so on and so forth. So that's a quick overview about what an index is. So once we have specified an index, the next step is we have already the URI available for us, and basically that's all I need for now. In case there's any other information, I can come back here and add it. So let's save this. So once we have done that, let us, inside this folder here, the .NET ELK, let's create a new folder. No, this is not what I wanted. Let's create a new folder, and we're gonna call this folder models. New folder, and we're gonna call it models. Perfect. So inside the folder models here right now, I'm gonna create a new class, and this class I'm gonna call it product. And basically right now this product is gonna be what's gonna be stored inside my index, and what's gonna be stored inside my Elasticsearch. So what I'm gonna store inside my product. Why it's not working? Let's check again. Okay, so first I'm gonna store my ID, well, the product ID actually. And then I'm gonna put it's a string. I'm gonna put the product title, and then after I put the product title, I'm gonna put another string, which is gonna be the description. And once I put the description of the product, I'm gonna put another property, which is gonna put an int, which is gonna be the price. And lastly, let's say I wanna put quantity, which is gonna be an int also, and we put a quantity. Great. So now what I did is I created the model that's gonna be actually representing all of my information inside Elasticsearch, which is gonna be inside the index. Once we have added our item, or basically product in our case, the next step is we're going to be adding our extension method, and basically that extension method will be able to allow us to integrate Elasticsearch inside our ASP.NET Core. What does that mean? It will allow us to utilize dependency injection in order for us to inject our Elasticsearch client inside our ASP.NET Core pipeline, so we're able to utilize it anywhere we want inside our application. So let's do this right now. So first of all, inside our .NET ELK folder, we're going to create a new folder, and this folder we're going to be calling it extensions. Once we create this folder, the next step is we're going to be creating a class, new class, and this class we're going to be calling Elasticsearch extensions. Perfect. Once we have done that, the first thing we need to do is we need to make this class static. Once we have done that, the next step is for us to start adding the information that we need in order for us to be able to communicate with Elasticsearch. So public void, actually public static void, and we're gonna call it add Elasticsearch. And then we're gonna make it this .i service collection, and we're gonna call it services. And then basically we're gonna put the I configuration, and I'm gonna call it configuration. Once we have done that, let's open this and we can start actually adding it. So let us explain what happened here. Why did we add the I service collection, and why did we add the configuration? So the first thing, the reason we added the I service collection is because this extension method is going to be utilized inside our Elasticsearch dependency injection, and because we need to actually add it to our pipeline. And in order for us to utilize all of those services, we need to actually pass this services, which is going to be the iService collection. And the reason we put this, because we're going to be referring back to it. And the reason we put the I configuration, in order for us to utilize the configuration and to be able to connect with the app settings and get the values from there. So first things first, inside here, we're going to be actually getting the URL for Elasticsearch. So we're going to put var URL equal configuration. And basically, let's see what we have put inside our app settings. And we can see we have put ELK configuration. So let's take that. And let's put a column so we can actually get it. And then it's going to be URI. So we got the URL. Second, we need to get the default index. So far, I'm going to call it default index. In our case, it's going to be the product. Also, it's going to be configuration. We're going to go to the ELK configuration. Let's copy paste it. It's better. Copy paste. And then we're going to put column. And then we're going to put index. Once we have done that, the next step is, I think that's it. In case we are connecting, for example, to with an Elasticsearch which exists, for example, on Elastic Core, on Azure and AWS, so on and so forth, our own server which is running Elasticsearch, we need to pass the credentials. But for now, we're using it locally. We don't really need the credentials because it's locally on our machine. So once we have done that, the next step is for us to set up the settings. So var settings equal new connection string, and this connection string is basically, if we click on it and we fix the references, let's first start to add new URI, and this is gonna be the URL that we have. And basically we're gonna do, I think that should be it, and let's put semicolon here. And now let's fix those reference. New connection string. Okay, maybe let's add dot pretty JSON and dot default index. We'll put default index. Okay, let's see why this connection string is not being picked up. So maybe we need to add, okay, let's do this. Let's make this .NET 6, nice. And I think maybe I'm mistaken, let's see. This connection string, let's see, is it connection settings? I think it's connection settings, let's see. Yes, connection settings, not connection string. Okay, so once we have added the new connection settings, we have added pretty JSON, and if we look here, what does it do? It basically forces all requests to be returned in a nice JSON so we can actually read it and utilize it. And basically what we have defined is the default index that we're going to be able to communicate with. So these are the settings that we currently have. Once we have done that, the next step is what we wanted to do is we want to add the index that we currently have. So how do we do that? In order for us to add this, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a new method, and then we're going to be referring to this method here. So it's going to be private static void. Can call it add default index, sorry, default mappings, because we're going to be mapping the index. We're going to pass the connection string, connection settings, and we're going to call it settings. And once we do that, we're going to put settings dot default mapping, default mapping for, and basically we're gonna be doing the mapping for the product. We're gonna explain this in detail, so in case you have any questions, please put them in the comments down below, but I'm gonna try my best to go over them all. And we're gonna say P for product, and we're gonna say P dot ignore P, call it X dot price. We don't want to sync the price. And anything else, I think that should be fine. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we want to add something else. First, let's add the reference to the product and let's explain what's going on here. So first, if we take a look at the product, we have price, quantity, description, title, all of this. And basically what we're doing here is, so if I don't specify, if I just do default mapping, what it means is all of my information inside this object, which is gonna be the ID, the title, description, price, and quantity, they're gonna be sent to Elasticsearch so they are able to synchronize there. And basically anytime I query them, this information is gonna be returned. But the key thing here is when I wanna search for something, I'm telling Elasticsearch here right now, because I have not specified any ignore conditions, that I want to search on all of them. I want to search on the ID, the title, the description, the price, and the quantity. So the search is gonna cover all of that. But in essence, I don't want to be actually to search on all of this. All I want to do to allow, for example, the search, I want to search, for example, on the title, and I want to search on the description. But I don't want to be actually to be able to search on the ID. I don't want to be able to search on the price. I don't want to be able to search on the quantity. All I want to be able for them to search is on the title and the description. And in order for us to be allowing that, so when we go here to the default mappings, what I want to do is I want to add those ignore list. So this ignore list will tell Elasticsearch that, okay, for these properties, you're not going to be searched on. You're going to completely ignoring them when there's going to be any type of search query coming in. So that's why we need to add this. So first we said we're going to be actually, let's fix this layout. And basically we said we're going to ignore the price, and let's put another one here. We're gonna put ignore dot the ID. I don't want to search on the ID. We'll add more ignore on the, let's see, quantity. I don't want to search on the quantity. So now we are basically the price, ID, quantity. This is exactly what I want. I only want to search on title and description. So that's exactly what I want. So again, the default mapping here is telling basically Elasticsearch which fields of my object I want to search on and which fields I want to ignore. In our case, I want to ignore three things: the ID, the price, and the quantity. And I want only to search on the title and the description. Because I have not added them to the ignore list, this is what Elasticsearch we're going to be able to utilize in order for Elasticsearch to perform any search query that I requested. So once we have done that, all I need to do right now here is just to call this method, and we're gonna put add default mappings, and we're gonna pass the settings that I have set up before. Perfect. So once we have done that, the next step is it's gonna go to services. Actually, yeah, we're gonna basically create a client. So var client equal new Elastic client, and we're gonna pass the settings for it. And once I pass the settings for my Elasticsearch client, the next step is going to be services dot add singleton. And here basically I'm adding my Elasticsearch, which is going to be the iElastic client, and basically I'm passing the client. We're going to explain all of this, just make you finish it up, and then once we do that, we need to create a method which is going to be create the index. But before we actually do that, let's explain what happened here. So once we have added the default mapping to our extension method, the next step is for us to create an Elasticsearch client. And this Elasticsearch client is going to take all of the settings that we have created previously in order for us to utilize. So once we have added those, created the client, we are actually adding this client to our dependency injection. So in case we want to call this client inside our controllers, inside our classes, we are able to do that. Why we are able to do that? Because we are actually utilizing the services. We are making it as a singleton. If you don't really know what a singleton mean or what dependency injection mean, I have another video which I'm going to be linking here somewhere where you can actually understand the difference between a singleton and the different types of dependency injection that is provided. And if we look, for example, we have add, let's see, we have add singleton, so if we click on add, we have add singleton, which is one type of dependency injection. We have add transient, which is another one, and we have add scoped, which is another one. So right now we're going to add it as a singleton. And if you don't really know what the difference between singleton, scoped, and transient, I have another video, as I said before, you can watch it. But for now, we're going to add it as a singleton because we want the same instance to be available for us across the application. And once we have added this singleton to services as singleton, we're basically injecting our Elasticsearch dependency injection into our main pipeline. Well, that means that we are utilizing the default dependency injection framework, the container that comes with ASP.NET. So we are able to tap into that dependency injection instance wherever we want inside our application. So that's why we are doing it here. So that's why inside our initialization of add Elasticsearch, we have passed the iService collection, so we're able to pass this instance to our application. Basically, we are able to pass the dependency injection instance to our main application pipeline. So once we have done all of that, the next step for us is we need to actually create the index that we have. And first, let's add a new method, and also it's going to be private static void, and we're going to call it create index. We're going to be basically creating the product index that we have. So basically, whenever the application starts, it's going to check our Elasticsearch instance. Do you have an index called the products? If it does, it will create it. It will not create it. If it doesn't have it, it will actually create it. So we're going to call it create index, and we're going to pass the Elastic client. We're going to call it the client, and we're going to pass the index name. It's going to be a string of index name. And once we have done that, the next step for us is to actually add this. So it's going to be var create. Actually, we don't need that. We don't want to have a response because it's void. We can just say client dot indices, which is a plural of indexes, and we're going to put create, and we're going to pass the index name, and we're going to say index, or we can call it I for index. I.map, and we're gonna say map product, which is the object that we want to have, and we're gonna say that do all of it based on the auto map. That's it. And let's do this, and let's close this. Okay, so what happened here? Let us explain this in a bit more details. Okay, so what happened? First, we have got the client, which is the Elasticsearch client that we have created here, which we're gonna actually create it right now, pass it right now. Let's do it so we can explain it. So we're gonna put create a client, create index, sorry, and we're gonna pass client, and we're gonna pass the index name, and that's it. Is it called index name? Default index is called. Okay, so what happened here? So we passed the client and the default index, and basically once we pass the client, we have tapped into the indices, which is basically all of the indexes that exist, and then we told those indexes you need to create. And if we hover above create, we can see that what it does, it puts a request to the Elasticsearch API to create this index for us. And if you want to understand more about it, I can just click on this link and let us open it in our web browser. And let's open it in a new tab. and we can understand what's going on here. So basically it's a put request, and basically it takes all of these parameters, and in essence what does it do? It will create an index for us, and it doesn't, if it doesn't exist, it will create it. So let's go back to it. Let's go back to our source code. So basically what is taken here is taking the index name that you want to create, which is going to be product, and then what we're telling it is that this product is going to map to our product class, or which is going to be here. And basically this product class is going to map everything, which is going to be the ID, the title, the description, the price, the quantity. All of this is going to be mapped automatically for us. We don't really have to. So basically we can think about it as an auto mapper, which is going to be doing all of this mapping together. And in essence here, which in essence here, we are just giving it the structure of this index. So we created this index, which is going to be, as we said before, which is going to be the section of Elasticsearch. So we're going to be storing all of this product, and we're telling it for this index, the types of a JSON that we're going to be storing, it's going to be similar to the product, which is going to be ID, title, description, price, and the quantity. And this is going to be the structure for it. And please do all of the auto mapping together. We don't really want to be to do that manually. And this is what's happening here. And in essence, this is all we need right now in this section in order for us to have all of our Elasticsearch embedded in our ASP.NET Core application. So once we have done all of that, the next step for us is we need to actually link this extension method to our program.cs in order for us to utilize it. So let's come here. And basically what we're going to be doing is, before we can actually build it, we need to add the Elasticsearch service here. So we're going to put builder dot services dot add, nope, that's not it, add Elasticsearch. Let's copy it, extension, add Elasticsearch, and let's pass here the builder dot configuration, and let's fix those references. Okay. So you might think to yourself, okay, hold on a second. My extension method is taking iService collection with this and is taking an iConfiguration. But inside my program.cs, I can see that we are only passing the configuration. Where is the services? Why it's not being passed? Because we made this as an extension method, and because we have passed this here, it means that we are attaching this extension method to our service collection. So that's why we are able to utilize it directly from here. And because we are attaching it to our service collection, we do not really need to pass it, because it will pass by reference to it. So that's why it's being passed directly to us here through this service collection. That's why we have not specified it before. All we needed to pass is the configuration. And basically this is all we need to do right now. So let's save this. And let's put .NET build to make sure that everything is working as it should be. Let's give it a few seconds. Build succeeded. Perfect. This is exactly what we want. So once we have done the .NET build, let's do .NET run, just to make sure that the application is still running as it should be. .NET run. The application is running, and right now if I take this endpoint and let's go to our web browser, and let's see what's the controller here that we have. So inside our controllers folder, we have weather forecast, and we have a simple get. Okay, let's take that weather forecast. Let's copy this, and let's pass this here. And we should see right now a JSON with a weather forecast. Okay, perfect. So the application is still running as it should be. We're getting the information. Great. This is exactly what we want to be right now. So the next step right now, after we have added all of this, is we're going to be creating a new controller. And inside this new controller, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be basically querying our Elasticsearch and basically adding stuff to our Elasticsearch. So let's do this right now. So let's go back to our source code and let us stop this. And the first thing we're going to be doing is inside our controllers folder, we're going to be adding a new class, and I'm going to call this products controller. As simple as that. And then what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be, let's copy these so we can save a bit of time. Let's copy this. and we'll put them inside our products controller, and let us fix those references, and let's make this .NET 6. It's the same thing, it's just for like UI, it looks nicer in my eyes. That's the only thing, without those extra curly braces. And let's click on this one here, and let's put this as utilizing this, and I think this should be fine. And then we'll put controller base, because this is where we're inheriting from. And basically this, right now we have a controller. So now let's add the constructor, and let's pass ElasticSearch to it. And once we have done that, we'll start adding our actions. So the next step for us is to start actually building our controller. So let's start first by adding our ElasticSearch client. So it's gonna be private, read only. It's gonna be Elastic client, and we're gonna put Elastic client. Perfect. Then we're gonna be adding a private as well, read only. It's gonna be the iLogger of products controller. We're gonna call it underscore logger. Great. The next step is we're gonna be creating our constructor, and basically it's gonna be let's create it like this. It's gonna be here, and we're gonna put ElasticSearch client, Elastic client. Another one is gonna be the iLogger of products controller, and we're gonna call it logger. And then here we're just going to be initializing it, so it's going to be underscore elastic client equal elastic client, and underscore logger equal logger. Okay, so we have got this right now. So right now what we have done is we just created our constructor, and we have just passed our ElasticSearch and logger for it. And the reason we are able to do that is because we have already added our ElasticSearch client to our dependency injection in our program.ts. Great. So once we have done that, the next step is we're going to be creating two actual actions. The first one is going to be the search, which is going to be allow us to search for our indexes and get all of the information from there. And the other one is going to be actually the ability to add the products to our index and actually get the information back from there. So basically the first one is going to be allowing us to search. The second one is to actually add a product to our ElasticSearch. So let's start with that. So the first one is going to be our search, and it's because we are searching, it's going to be a get. So let's put HTTP get, and let's give it a name. And this name, it's going to be get products. Okay. And once we have done that, then it's going to be public async. It's going to be task of action result, and we're going to call it get. And what we're going to pass here is we're going to pass the string, which is going to be the keyword. Okay, great. Once we have done that, the next step for us is we need to actually create our search query, which is very easy. So var results, which is going to be the results that we're going to get, we're going to make it await because it's going to be async, and we're going to utilize the elastic client, so underscore elastic client dot what are we going to be doing here? We're going to be searching, so we're going to put search async. And what is the object that we're going to be basically searching and mapping it to? It's going to be products. And then once we have done that, what we need to do is we need to start specifying our query. So we're going to put we're going to create a lambda function, and we're going to pass the query. And then basically for that lambda function, for that search, we need to actually start creating our query string or query container. So we're going to put query, Q actually. And this is going to be q.queryString, and we're going to be, so basically we're telling it that there's a search that you need to actually go through, and then it's going to be called the search container. Inside the search container, we're telling it that we're going to have a querying section, and that the querying section is going to take a query string. We're going to delve into more details, but just wanted to explain this from now. So once we have done that, so we're telling it the query string, and lastly, let's put it again, for example, d.query, and here we are actually gonna pass what is the actual query that we want. So we're gonna put star we're gonna put plus plus another star, and then inside this plus plus what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be adding the keyword that we're gonna be searching for. And then once we have done all of that, the next step for us is gonna be dot size. Actually, it's not gonna be here, it's gonna be here, dot size, and we're gonna say give me the first 1,000 result that you find. So, and once we have done that, we're gonna put result return, and we're gonna put OK, and then we're gonna pass the result. Again, this is gonna fail, which is gonna explain to you why it's gonna fail, but let's discuss it like this. So the first thing that we done here is we went to the Elastic client and we told the Elastic client, okay, we need to actually search for something right now, and we're telling it that this search right now it's gonna be async. Perfect. So right now Elastic client know that's gonna go there and it's gonna look for something and it's gonna search for something in an async manner. Second thing that we did is we added the product section, and the product here, it means that we are actually the object that or the document that you're gonna be looking for, you need to map it to the products model that we have in our application. Great. So once we have done that, we told Elastic client what we wanted. Now we needed to do is we want to look into our search descriptor, or basically we are creating some kind of like a informational data that we are passing to Elasticsearch in order for it to know what type of search that does it need to do, what type of querying does it need to do. Again, for the this can be very complicated and very simple. For the sake of this demo, we're gonna take it bit by bit and doing the simplest version. So the first thing we told it, okay, you need to look for a query string. So we're passing to it a query string, and basically what Elasticsearch is right now thinking, okay, I'm gonna have some kind of a query, and that query is what I'm gonna be utilizing in order for me to do the search. So we're telling here it's basically the d.query string. It means that we're gonna be passing a query string, and then we are actually passing the query. And here inside the query, we can see that we have a star, keyword, and the star. So what does that mean? So we know star is a wildcard, and basically what we're doing here is the star keyword star. We're telling Elasticsearch that the keyword that we're looking for is, it could be between text, it could be in the beginning of a sentence, it could be at the end of the sentence, it could be anywhere inside our document that we're looking for. It doesn't have to be in a single location. So the star and the star at the beginning and the star at the end are basically wildcard. It could be like there could be a lot of information before, it could be there's a lot of information after, it could be nothing, we don't know, but all we care about is a single keyword. So let's say I want to tell Elasticsearch to only search for any object or any document that exists, where it only start by that keyword and it can have any information that one after that. So what do I do in that case? I just remove the star from the beginning of it. So it will be keyword plus the actual star. That's the or the wildcard. That's going to be the query for me. But for this sake of this demo, I'm going to be utilizing the simplest way possible, which is actually have a wildcard at the beginning, a wildcard at the end, and the keyword in the middle. So that's what's happening. And lastly, I'm telling Elasticsearch that, again, this is oversimplifying. I'm telling it, get me the first 1,000 result. So it will be good if you're actually building an application to actually utilize this with like a pagination, have some kind of logic there, so you can only loading the first, for example, 50 results, and having some kind of a counter where you're actually getting the next 50 and the next 50, and basically caching those results. That's a different topic for a different day, but for now, for the simplicity of this, I'm just telling Elasticsearch, get me the first 1,000 result, and I'm just going to be returning that. So once we have done that, I'm basically taking these results and I'm sending it back to the client. So let's save this and let's put .NET build to make sure that the application is building as it should be. Perfect. Now let's run this. .NET run. This is gonna run. Great. Now let's go to Insomnia. And let's create a new request collection. We're gonna call this request collection ELS demo, I don't know, V2, because I already tried different demos. And basically what I'm gonna be doing here, I'm gonna be creating a new request. I'm gonna call it search products. It's gonna be of type get, of course. And basically we need to pass the URL. So let's copy the URL from here. Let's paste it here, and it's gonna be, the control is gonna be products, and the query string, which is gonna be keyword, I'm gonna look, for example, for shoes. This is gonna fail right now, and we know it's gonna fail. But why it has failed? It failed because of this result. Why has it failed? As we said before, Elasticsearch is a document database. So once we are actually performing a query against our Elasticsearch, we're not only getting the results back, we're getting a lot of information back. We're getting, for example, information about the cluster, about the node, about the search index. We're getting information about the product. There's a lot of information that Elasticsearch return to us in order for us to utilize, in order for us to make the application as better as possible, or to enhance the application as much as possible. So that's why Elasticsearch will return a lot of information back to us. So when we're just getting those results and sending it back to the user, that's not a really good way. So what we need to do is we need to tell Elasticsearch, or basically we need to take the results that Elasticsearch gave us, we need to take the document section of those, turning them into an array or to a list, and then sending them back to the users. So that's why it's failing, because right now we're just bumbling the users with all of the results, and that's not what we need to do. So here what we need to do is, with the results, we need to put dot, so it's going to be results dot documents. So if we hover over this, we can see that this gets the documents inside the hit. Hit means the search result. By deserializing it from the document, we basically have passed the product, so it's going to be deserializing it from a JSON to product, and it's going to give it back to us. So once we have done that, we're going to put dot to list, and then once we have done that, let's save this and let us stop the application and run it again. And right now, because first of all, I think there's gonna be some data from previous testing I was doing, but we should see some results coming in right now. So let's go back to Insomnia and let's run this again. And we can see here that we got some results. Again, these results, I have already pre-populated it, so we can see some data here. So in your case, you shouldn't see anything. But the reason I did this right now, so we can actually see this, and I was testing it as I was going. So right now, we know that our result is working, and we are getting the result as it should be. The next step that we're going to be doing is we need to add another action, and this action will allow us to actually add products to our Elasticsearch. So let's do this right now. So here we're going to be adding HTTP post, because we are posting stuff and we're requesting stuff from it, and we're going to give it a name, and this name we're going to be call it add product, as simple as that. And then we're going to be public async task action result. We're going to make it a post, and we're going to pass the product, and basically in 2 sentences we're going to be able to add this. But a disclaimer here, again, this is a very simple application. It's a demo application in order for us to understand how we utilize Elasticsearch. When you're getting information from the users, in order before you add them to your Elasticsearch, you need to actually do some sanitation. So you need to actually, and verification, you need to verify that the information they are passing is correct. You need to make sure that all of the fields that are required to be filled needs to be there. You need to make sure that all of the data that you are passing are actually valid. You need to make sure that there is no information which is not sanitized. All of those information you need to make sure. But again, this is a demo, so we're just gonna save the object no matter what the user send directly into our Elasticsearch. But again, as an advice, when you're actually building with a real world application, you need to actually do some sanitation on the data and verification on the data that the user is passing before we can actually save it inside our Elasticsearch. So right now, let us actually start saving it. So how are we going to be doing that? We're going to be utilizing the Elasticsearch client, and it's going to be an async call, so we need to make an await. We're going to put Elastic client, and then we're going to put a dot, and then once we put the dot, what we're going to be doing here, where there is a lot of options that Elasticsearch it's giving us. But the first thing that we're going to be doing is we need to tell Elasticsearch that, okay, we need to tap into the document, and then we're going to be actually adding an object to that document. So we're going to we're going to tap into the index, and then we're going to add an object to that index, a document to that index. So we're going to put index, and then we're going to put document, and we can see that we have already a command called an index document. And basically what we're saying here is we're going to be indexing some document into our index, or basically adding a new object to our index. So once we do that, we're just gonna pass here the product, and that's it. And as simple as that, what we're doing here is we're actually taking the product and adding it to Elasticsearch. So what is happening here? Let us understand what's the purpose of this and what is going on. So the object that we are sending, it had reached our action. We did all of the verification that we need to do. And basically, we are telling right now Elastic Client that inside our index, we have a new document that we want to add. Again, Elasticsearch is a document-based database. It's not a relational one. So that's why we're calling it a document. So basically we're telling here Elasticsearch that this object that came here, we are converting it to a document, and actually we need to actually save it in our index. That's what's happening here. So once we have done that, all we need to do is just return okay to our user or to our client. Okay, perfect. So once we have done that, let us stop this application. Let's run it again. And once it's started to run, let's go back to Insomnia and let's create a new product, a new request, and we'll call it add product to ELS. And this is gonna be of type post, and the body is gonna be JSON. We'll create this, and basically let's take the same URL, let's paste it here, and basically let's go here to JSON and let's start filling it in. So first we need to pass the ID. And I'm just gonna pass any random ID, which is a 5, and then we're gonna put the title. Let's put the product is, let's say, Mercedes Benz F1 car. Description, let's say best Formula 1 team in the world, of course. So, and then we're gonna put, for example, the price. Although they are priceless, we're gonna put 100, and the quantity, because there's only one Mercedes team in the world, we're gonna put 1. Very simple. Before we send this request to our action, in order for us to add it to our Elasticsearch, we need to remember something. When we have created our Elasticsearch and we have configured it, we have added something to ignore. And these stuff to ignore are basically the few members of the, or few properties of the object we told Elasticsearch to ignore. So let's see what these are. So if we go back to the Elasticsearch extension, we can see that we have told Elasticsearch to ignore the price, ID, and the quantity. So for the sake of this demo, I'm only gonna tell it to, for now, actually before we do anything, I'm gonna keep it as is and we're gonna see the result, and then we're gonna change it a bit so we can see the different result. So let's go back to our Insomnia. I'm gonna send this. And we can see here something happened here, and we got a 200 OK, which is the expected result. Now let's search for it. So inside of my query here, I'm gonna change shoes to Mercedes. And I'm gonna click send. And basically what I got here, I got the results back, and we got see the ID equals 0, price 0, quantity 0, and I got the title Mercedes-Benz F1 car, and description best Formula 1 team in the world, which is great. But why did I get 0, 0, 0? Because Elasticsearch, we told Elasticsearch here that it needs to ignore the price, the ID, and the quantity. So let's change this. So for example, I'm gonna change this ID. I'm gonna save this. And I'm gonna do this, stop the application, run it again. And now I'm gonna send this request. Let's see what's gonna happen. Also 0. Why? Because basically when I send this request to Elasticsearch, it knew that it needs to ignore it. So it ignored it, and it's now returning for me a 0. So let me now add a new product. And let's see, I want to add, instead, let's give it an ID 6, and instead of Mercedes, we're gonna put, let's say, McLaren, Mercedes, because Mercedes provide their engines. So, and we're gonna say runner-up Formula 1 team in the Formula 1 team. Price 100, let's put price 50. quantity 1, and let's send this. We got a 200, perfect. And now we go to search, and let's see what happens when I search for Mercedes again. We see we got 2 results, which is what we expected. The first one is the first object, the second one is the second one, McLaren Mercedes. And we can see here that we got an ID 6. Why did we get the ID back? Because we removed the ignore ID. So right now Elasticsearch knew, okay, I have an ID, I need to utilize it. Before it was ignoring it. So this we see here how the mapping actually work, when actually the default is gonna happen, the ignore was gonna happen, or the Elasticsearch is gonna take into consideration of different models. So this is really important. So once we have done that, something else that we really need to note here, that we can see here, although the word Mercedes on the first one is in the beginning of the sentence, on the second one is in the middle of the sentence, we can see that here the wildcard actually played a very valid role, because basically we have put a wildcard at the beginning and the wildcard at the end. These 2 wildcards with the keyword in the middle, it allowed us to have a much more broader search aspect. If we take a look at it from the first position, which is going to be the Mercedes without anything at the back, if we didn't put this wildcard there, the second result would not have showed up because it's not at the beginning of the sentence. So that's why having a wildcard and having the query object very carefully designed to meet your requirement, it's very essential. So you don't just add it any way you want. You need to actually think about it in a way where it actually meet your search requirement. So finally, let's add another product, and let's call this product, let's say Ferrari. And we got Ferrari getting better Formula 1 team. And the price for Ferrari, let's say it's gonna be 40. And quantity 1, and let's change the ID to 7. So right now we can see here that we don't have any mention of Mercedes. So let's send this. And right now if I search for anything related to Mercedes, I should not see the Ferrari in the results. So let's see what's gonna happen here. Once I send this, we got back the expected results. So now let's change this Mercedes to Ferrari. Once I did, we can see here that I only got the Ferrari result, which is exactly the thing that I was expecting. Okay, perfect. So now we have covered that our application is running as it should be. Our data is actually being added to Elasticsearch as it should be. We are getting the results as it should be. We have explained the wildcard. So the last thing that we want to cover here is basically the extension that we have installed at the beginning of this video, which is called Elastic View. And let's see how this is actually being utilized. So let's go back to our web browser. And basically, let's go back to Elastic View. So I'm gonna close this and let's see how it's gonna work. So if I want to access Elastic View, all I need to do is click on this icon in the web browser, and we can see here that we got a lot of different information about our cluster, which is perfect. So the first thing is I want to go to indices. And indices mean here basically the index that I have inside my Elasticsearch. And basically we can see here that the first indices that I have is the default one that Elasticsearch create, and the other one is products that I have decided to create. So if I click on this, first before I do, we can see we have 6 products, 6 items or 6 documents inside this index. And if I click on it, we can see all of these products available here for us, which is great. So once we have added all of that, we can see here as well that the first product that I have added, which is Mercedes-Benz F1 car, I have not, the Elasticsearch did not actually added an ID for me because it was ignored by Elasticsearch. We have added it. But for the rest of the 2, we can see it has actually stored the Elasticsearch information for me, which is exactly what we were expecting. So let's say I want to search for it. So let's go click on search, and let's say here, I want to search for Mercedes. And I click on enter. We can see here that we can actually see the results coming up from this web extension to match actually the result from my application. So this is a very good tool for me to understand or to actually test the query inside my data, my application, as well the query inside here that's gonna be able to directly connect to my Elasticsearch to get the information back. So this is a very useful tool for me to understand my documents inside my Elasticsearch, the query that I'm adding, and the expected result. And it's free, so why not use it? So basically, this is gonna be the final aspect of this video. And now let's do a quick summary of what we did today. So the first thing that we have done today is basically we have got the project from a previous existing from my GitHub account. Again, follow me there if you're not already following me. And then basically what we did is we went through our Docker Compose file. We explained what does it do, how does it work, the different services, Elasticsearch and Kibana. And then we have explained how does it work and how we can actually run it. Once we have run it, we verify that it's actually running by actually going to the URLs and checking that the information which is being popping up, which is going to be the information about our Elasticsearch cluster and our Kibana homepage, are actually showing. So once we have done that, we went back to our application. We actually added some configuration to our app settings. Once we have added some configuration to our app settings, the next step is we have added our model, which is going to be the product. Once we have added that, we added an extension method inside our application in order for us to be able to inject it inside our program.cs. And through this extension method, we have added all of the configuration for Elasticsearch, and basically we have defined the index that we wanted to, and we have covered the different aspects, the ignore and all of that from Elasticsearch. And once we have done all of that, we have injected into our program.cs. Once we have injected to our program.cs, it means that we are able to utilize it within the dependency injection inside our ASP.NET Core application. Once we have done all of that and we made sure that it's working as it should be, we have created our own controller, and that controller basically called the products controller. We had two main actions. The first one is to add a product, the first one is to search Elasticsearch, and the second one is to actually add a product to Elasticsearch. And then we have explained the search query and how does it work, and why do we need to have the documents there and to list, and then how we can actually add products within a couple of lines to Elasticsearch. And in essence, that's a quick overview of Elasticsearch with ASP.NET and .NET 6. Please write your questions in the comments down below. If you have any clarification or if you have any idea that you'd like me to cover, also please add it. If you made it this far to this video, please type your favorite animal in the comments so I will know that you have reached here, and I'll like your comment as well. Lastly, if you like this video, please like and share and subscribe. It will really help the channel. Have a good day.